Hello, my name is Ernesto Balderas, Interim Executive Director for Utah Cultural Alliance. There were a lot of things that happened in week 6, so let's just jump right into it. So the big thing that everyone is wondering, and the big priority for this general session, was funding, and I have some news from the Executive Appropriations Committee. Within their additional proposed funding items, the big one that I know everyone has been asking for is the status of the Arts and Museums general operating grants housed in the Utah Division of Arts and Museums. Within the appropriation for the Executive Appropriations Committee, they appropriated $2 million one time. That means that on top of the $4 million that had been appropriated in ongoing funding in years prior, this $2 million on top of it would bring the total to $6 million for the Utah Division of Arts and Museums general operating grants for fiscal year 2025. That does not guarantee that it will be $6 million again for fiscal year 2026 when we see each other again in the 2025 general session. So we do need to go back and continue to request additional funding that year. But for this year, for fiscal year 2025, we will have $6 million in the Utah Division of Arts and Museums general operating grants. This represents an increase of $2 million from the appropriation of $4 million that was in fiscal year 2024. That appropriation that was $4 million for Utah Division of Arts and Museums and $2 million that instead went to the Governor's Office of Economic Opportunity. So there is some change, and arguably there was no change in terms of the total $6 million that was available to the arts and cultural industry. However, for this year, it was appropriated $2 million one time and $4 million ongoing for the Utah Division of Arts and Museums, leaving out the Governor's Office of Economic Opportunity for this specific grant. So hopefully that clarifies things. If you have any further questions, you can always call me at 714-876-7125 or email me at ernesto@utculture.org, and I'm more than happy to walk you through it just a little bit more. There are other things that were included as far as the cemetery preservation grants. There was also allocated $300,000 one time, $2 million one time for the Golden Spike Monument, funding for America 250 programming at $500,000 one time. So there's a variety of things that you can view if you go and look at the attachments in my email that I sent you in the additional proposed funding items. Hopefully you can see that. There were other things that also happened in terms of the policy front. This week, a new bill, Student Access to Books, HB 583, was introduced by Representative King, and it looks like it is in direct contradiction to HB 29, Sensitive Material Review Amendments, that our partners at Utah Library Association and Utah Cultural Alliance as well, we did some work to try and introduce substitutes to advocate for changes to the bill, but this looks to be the response to that bill, HB 583. I'll be keeping you apprised of that as that moves forward or does not move forward. I can't say for certain throughout the rest of this week, the final week of the legislative session. In addition, there's SJR 14, the joint resolution honoring the 125th anniversary of the Utah Division of Arts and Museums, that passed the House and so now is being sent for enrolling to be sent off to the governor. SJR 9, the joint resolution honoring Utah's Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islanders culture and communities, that also did pass in the Senate and the House, so is also now being sent to enrolling for that. In addition, there were a couple of other bills that were introduced, like SB 272, that reinvest money into Salt Lake City and various other places for the purposes of sports and entertainment. That could include this industry, so I'm just keeping you aware of that. For this week, though, we'll be keeping our eye on watching all the variety of funding bills that now come out since Executive Appropriations Committee has now delivered their additional proposed funding items and various motions for staff to create. And we'll also be watching HB 335 state grant process amendments. We're hoping for an amendment that extends the active and effective date of that bill to 2025 rather than 2024, just so that way we can make sure that any grants housed under Utah Division of Arts and Museums, the greater umbrella of Department of Cultural and Community Engagement, won't be affected by the mandates within this bill. So I will keep you updated on all those things. As always, if you have any questions, please call me back at 714-876-7125 or email me at ernesto@utculture.org, and I'm more than happy to explain things. Until then, thank you very much and take care.